How's it going, everybody? Bryan, Alvarez, and Dave Meltzer here, Wrestling Observer Live. We are here on the Jericho Cruise. It is the Thursday edition of the show, and our final day here on this boat, Dave. It's almost all wrapped up. Got to be off this boat at 8:30 in the morning Eastern tomorrow. So it's looking like Mike Sempervive is going to be doing the Friday edition of the show, and then Dave and I are going to be home and right back to action. There's all sorts of shows on Saturday night. There's the Worlds Collide show. There's a UFC show.
I think New Japan starts their tour this week.
We'll talk about some New Japan news here in a second.
Oh, really?
Yes, and we've also got about 55 hours of WWE coming up. The Royal Rumble on Sunday, and then Raw on Monday. It's going to be quite the week, but we've done bunch of shows from the boat. This is show number 6. We have 2 more coming this afternoon. We're going to be having a couple of special interviews here from the boat. Darby Allin's show was yesterday, if you haven't heard that, if you're a subscriber. And then if you are on the boat and you can somehow hear this, which you can't, we are doing another live Q&A at 3:45 this afternoon, and that'll be the last one here on this boat.
Where?
We'll be in the Stardust Room.
Stardust Room?
Is that what it's called?
I don't think so.
It's something like that. Stardust Theater?
Starlight?
I think it's Stardust.
Well,
is it not? Anyway, we're somewhere here on this boat.
You don't know where it is?
I don't know where it is. It's on a piece of paper over there.
Because I was out all morning, so I counted on you to figure out, because I thought it was 3 o'clock at the atrium.
Well, it was, but it got moved.
Right.
But
you're the one who knows where it got moved, because I was gone.
Well, I mean, it's star something. It's on a piece of paper over there. But
okay, good
there's
enough.
Inclement weather on the boat here today.
No, it's not. It's awesome.
Dave, that's why everything was moved, because the stuff that was going to be outside, they moved inside.
DDP's up there doing yoga right now.
He's doing
outside.
Yoga now, but that's...
Outside.
Hey,
is it inclement weather coming? Because I was out. I was just out for a second before I came down here. We'll talk about this after.
We'll talk about this after the break. Stick around, everybody, for more of the weather report from the Jericho Cruise. Wrestling Observer Live. We're back in the show. Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Dave Meltzer, also of WrestlingObserver.com, arguing about the weather here on the boat.
I was up there right before I came down here. It was sunny, warm. Sherry went up to lay out for the afternoon, since we're going to be busy all day.
Well, sure. But my point is, I got a message on the phone today, and that's why they explained to me that the show was moved. Because the weather, they moved everything last night, because the weather last night, one of the concerts ended early because of rain.
Right.
There's equipment up there.
The Midnight concert.
Yes, and if there's any rain on that stuff, it could blow up.
And there was a lot of water on the deck. So it must have rained.
Everything.
It must have rained last night, yeah.
Yes. But DDP's up there doing yoga. He's been doing a lot of yoga. And let me tell you something. If you want to be
DDP,
63 to 65 years old and jumping off the post, DDP Yoga, I think, is the it's the way to go.
DDP, Lexi, Darby Allin, and Priscilla Kelly were up there as the instructors.
That's right. Poor Darby yesterday. We did a show with him, and we made sure to wrap up in time for him to go do yoga. And so we wrapped up in time. He went up to do yoga, and then about 15 minutes later, there's a knock on our door, and Darby comes back and says, "I left my bag in here."
Yeah.
So anyway, he was late for yoga. All right, what happened yesterday on the boat, Dave? Give us the boat update.
Okay, there was 2 shows. The first show was nothing special. It was late afternoon. I think that everybody it was a lot of comedy-oriented stuff. It was Marko Stunt and Jungle Boy beat Private Party. And, all comedy. It's 2 babyface teams and everything. And Marko Stunt and Jungle Boy won. Moxley beat Joey Janela, which was fine, but nothing out of the ordinary. And then, what was the next one? Santana and Ortiz wrestled. I'm missing a match too. No. Santana and Ortiz wrestled against Frankie Kazarian and Scorpio Sky, and it was okay. And Santana and Ortiz won that match. Then we had Ric Flair and Chris Jericho, and Rick just talked about a million different topics, just Roddy Piper and St. Louis wrestling and Sam Mushnick and Triple H and what other stuff did he talk about? Rocky Johnson. He said he wasn't really good friends with Rocky Johnson, but He went to the funeral on, I believe it was Monday. That's why he came later. The original idea was that Flair would be here on Monday, Tuesday, and then he would fly home from the Bahamas, and then he wanted to go to Rocky Johnson's funeral, so they switched it to coming in on Tuesday in the Bahamas, and he's here for the rest of the trip. And, it just talked about all these different aspects of his career. Jim Herd trying to turn him into Spartacus. Jericho was very good as a host, kind of leading him through different subjects, and Flair was just going off on a lot of different things and talking about women and all that, and almost dying, and I think people really liked it. So the one thing that I did learn, since he only brought it up twice, is that Ric Flair, it's a big deal to Ric Flair that award is named after him.
Oh, really? He actually did, in the Observer, the Ric Flair Luthez Award.
Yeah, in fact, he actually did that in front of you when you didn't see it.
Yes, no, I was there. I saw it.
Oh, you saw Ric Flair's thing?
No, I saw when he mentioned that when
another time.
Yes,
right. Yeah, no, he mentioned it. Yeah, and so that was pretty cool. I mean, I never realized that was a big deal to him, but he liked it, and he talked about how Lou was a real shooter and he was not a real shooter, and he talked about just drinking, and he said he's retired the robe on the airplanes.
I sure as hell hope so.
Yes, he says
that's when Flair used to go into the bathroom, take off all of his clothes, and wear only his robe, and then parade around the airplane.
Yes,
you ain't getting away with that in 2020.
No. And he said that he's gotten rid of the second cell phone.
If you can figure out what that means.
Yes.
The second cell phone.
The second cell phone, yes. And, really put over Wendy. And, just about his second life, kind of being this iconic figure. And he's wearing his new Ric Flair Adidas tennis shoes.
Wow.
Yeah, they're definitely different looking. He was wearing them and putting them over. They're going to be out soon. And, he's, Ric Flair. Everybody loves seeing him, So then the night show was actually really good. It was Christopher Daniels and Luchasaurus, which Luchasaurus won with a standing moonsault after a kick. And, it was good. It was good. And then, what was next? Nyla Rose and Britt Baker, where Nyla Rose, 100% babyface. Britt, 100% heel. The crowd treated Nyla Rose like they thought she was Samoa Joe. Nyla's gonna kill you. Nyla's gonna kill you. And they went through. It was Nyla is definitely much better than she was when I first saw her when AEW started. Her timing and everything was fine. The match was okay. I mean, it was fine. It wasn't anything special though. But Britt's learning to be a heel, and the people were disliking her enough to where the match definitely worked. Then it was Adam Page and Darby Allin, and they had a hell of a match. I mean, it was essentially they went out there with the mentality that they were doing a TV or a pay-per-view match, but no dives, and there were no dives. But Darby, they worked together really well. You take that, what's interesting to me is you take, everybody thinks all these guys are just dives, right? Especially like Adam Page or something. You take that out of their repertoire and make them do a match, and they're fine. And this one was really good, And then main event was really interesting because it was the first intergender match in AEW history, and it was Kenny Omega and Rijo against Kip Sabin and Penelope Ford. And so I was thinking that they were going to do the thing where the men wrestled the men and the women wrestled the women. They did tag team stuff. And it was not that at all. I mean, there was a lot of Kenny against Penelope Ford, and even more Rijo and Kip Sabin. Rijo was so over. She was, I don't say she's the most over of the four because obviously Kenny was, but Rijo was so over with this crowd. I think this might be her first or second match of the week, but they were just going nuts for everything she did. And when she was working with Kip Sabin and doing arm drags and Hurricane Ranas and everything, the place just went crazy.
I saw the second half of this match, and the only thing about this match, I'm not a huge fan of intergender. I didn't mind this match at all, but there was one very wacky spot where Rijo gets in there with Kip Sabin, and she grabs him in the full Nelson, and everybody freaks out, and she hits him with the Snapdragon.
She did the Snapdragon.
She hits the Snapdragon on Kip Sabin. So then Penelope hits the ring, and Rijo gets behind her, and she hooks the full Nelson, but Penelope blocked it.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait a second. Penelope blocked the Snapdragon, but this giant dude wasn't able to block the Snapdragon? That doesn't even make sense.
But it built for later in the match because
it did build for later when Kenny gets a hold of Penelope and he puts her in the full Nelson. And I think Kip Sabin was in the ring in the corner, and so everybody's expecting, well, Kenny's not really going to do this. It's going to be broken up, and he gets it, and he stands there, and he looks one direction, looks the other, and he's looking for so long that you're figuring, okay, Kip's going to get in there, he's going to break it up because he's been waiting forever. So finally, Kenny hits a Snapdragon, and I think that everybody figured,
there's no way he's doing this.
Well, not only that, but it's the boat, and he's hit a couple Snapdragons. And,
on Kip, yeah.
And they're not New Japan Snapdragons. It's just
They're quick.
They're quick, but they're not brutal. He drilled her with this Snapdragon.
Oh.
And she just went backwards right on her head. It was just... it was like...
But she loved it.
They built it up, and
that was the spot of the match.
You were expecting a 50% payoff of what you thought was going to happen.
I don't think
anyone... they gave 100%.
I don't think anyone even thought he was going to...
Oh, my God.
I don't think anyone thought he was actually going to do that move to her.
No.
Nobody did. And then he did it, and he did it, hard and perfect. And, and the crowd absolutely exploded. And it ended up Kenny beating Kip with a one-winged angel. But this was... I would say one of the best matches on the boat. Just got over like crazy. And then Kenny did a speech, and he was started. You saw the speech, right?
Yeah, actually, hold that thought. We're going to head to a break. We'll come back with Kenny's speech and more Wrestling Observer Live. We're back here in the show. Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Dave Meltzer. We're talking about Kenny's speech after the very first mixed tag in AEW history. Because we are here in international waters, the match was sanctioned by AEW. We'll see if, and as Kenny noted, we'll see if we ever do it again. But hey, worst case scenario, there's always next year here on this boat.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. It was very much the tryout match. Kenny even said in the speech that if this match didn't go well, we probably would never do another one. But the match couldn't have gone better. The crowd was with it. The women, again, it's like, Kenny Omega and Kip Sabin is going to be pretty good. It's just going to be, no matter what. They could be half speed and they would be good. And they were, again, this was a big match for Omega. So he was, again, there's no dives. There's no crazy moves. It's solid wrestling, but it was really fast and really hard, and it was, you could see he was, for Kip Sabin, obviously this is a really big match, but Omega didn't say, it's on a boat, and these guys, it's an easy crowd, so I don't have to do a lot. I can just, he did not have that mentality. He was out there trying to. This was a really big match for him. And for the women, it was a gigantic match. For Penelope Ford, it's probably not even probably. This was the biggest match of her career, and she was nervous about it and everything. And Rijo, I don't know what she was thinking, but Rijo, this was the best I've seen of Rijo. This was the best Rijo match, and I know she had a really good one with Amy Sakura. On the pay-per-view, but this was her best performance. She missed nothing. Her timing was awesome, and Penelope Ford. I've never seen her look so good. She, and I attribute, a lot of it to working spots with Kenny Omega, and she worked a lot more with Rijo, and everything that she does good, they did, and whatever it is, again, I know that she's very green, but I sure didn't see it in this match because she was working with good people, and it was a really strong match.
All right, so then...
I have to, with speech.
Yes.
Okay. So he starts talking about how 100 years ago there was pro wrestling, and they probably didn't think any of these high-flying moves made any sense and all that. And then he said, and there was no tag team matches. And then, they brought in tag teams, and then they brought in six-man tag teams, and then they brought in high-flying moves. and he was talking about, so, you know, the whole thing is building up that a lot of people don't like this, and but wrestling changes, and we express ourselves in different ways. And he was really trying, and the crowd loved the speech. You know, he was really trying to push the idea of that this is just a new phase of wrestling, and it's not something bad. Because the reality is like, you know, Tony Khan's against intergender, but, you know, look, he was against it before. He gave it a shot. It did work. You know, I'm not a fan of it, but after seeing, you know, it worked with seeing matches with Candice LeRae and PWG. It's like, I know when it's done right, it works.
Well, that's like the whole thing. Like, I'm not an intergender fan either, but I'm not a fan of death matches either.
No.
But every now and then I'll see a death match that's like, that was just a great match.
Yeah.
And I think with intergender, it's like,
I don't want to see a lot of it, but it's a novel.
Probably 20% of it is done very well.
Yeah.
And there's probably 80% of it out there that's just like, I do not want to watch this. So I'm not averse to the idea of every now and then you have an intergender match on an AEW show, but I certainly don't think that like every AEW match should have intergender matches, because it's just...
Yeah, it'll get old. It'll
get old, and I think that a lot of them won't be what a lot of... I mean, that's what killed Lucha Underground in some ways. I mean, that was one of the big things that killed Lucha Underground. Was a bunch of badly done intergender matches.
Well, yeah. I mean, but the whole idea of doing it over, you know, doing it over and over and over again. Is, you know what, though? There were some really good intergender matches on Lucha Underground, too. Some really good ones.
Yeah, like I said, there are some that are good, and there's some that they're uncomfortable to watch. The way they're worked it's not getting over the women. It's not going to capture a casual audience.
Yeah, it's going to run off the casual audience. So the thing with this, I mean, there were kicks by the guys to the girls to the stomach. There were no punches to the face, which I think the punches to the face is the stuff that's not going to fly. You know, there were arm drags and hurricane ranas and things like that. A lot of it was the women getting the offense, but the guys would get the offense too. I mean, it wasn't like WWE with the, you know, when they did that mixed tag thing where the girls were allowed, or the women are allowed to, you know, get offense on the guys, but the guys aren't allowed to get any offense on the women, which, you know, after you watch like 2 matches and you figured that out, it all becomes really silly. Like compared to like the mixed tags in that tournament, this was way better than any match in that WWE mixed tag on both seasons. I mean, it was far better. You know, so yeah, the one thing I would say is, having seen the stuff, you know, and again, I watched from the very first AEW show live, and you know, different shows live and everything like that, but Nyla Rose is much better. Jungle Boy is so much better. Darby is so much better. Although Darby was good coming in because I've seen him PWG, but and Marko has really gotten his act together. Marko's a star.
Let's talk about Marko, and you cannot do any swearing.
Yes, I know it.
Last night on the Jericho Cruise, there was a Chris Jericho cover song concert
of famous rock songs from when we were kids.
Yes, where Jericho told the story of when he first broke in and he wanted a name, and the name
that was a good story.
The name he wanted to use was Jack Action.
Yeah,
and he had been training with Lance Storm. And if you're a subscriber, I mean, Jericho told the story, and it's like, this is Lance in a nutshell.
Oh, it was so great.
I cannot use a profanity, but long story short, Lance hears the name and he goes, well, that's a stupid name. And so, you know, Jericho's, you know, whatever, and he ends up...
Lance?
He was listening to a band that, believe it or not, I used to listen to this band all the time when I was a kid because my buddy Chris Kelly was a huge fan. Halloween, and they had this song called Walls of Jericho.
Right.
And Jericho was listening to it, and he just thought, Chris Jericho. And he told Lance, and Lance goes, that's a better name. And so the rest is history. And I'm sure Lance would say today that his grumpiness paid off in the end, his bluntness. So now he's Chris Jericho. Yeah. But 30 years later, 25 years later or whatever.
No, 30.
I guess it would be 30 years later.
30 years. This is all in 1970.
Chris Jericho is on stage with a Jack Action jacket on.
Yes.
That his seamstress made.
As he was Jack Action finally.
Yep. And he did his cover band. I mean, dude, the one thing I'll say about Jericho before we get into Marko Stunt is this guy is living his best life on this boat this week.
Oh, yeah.
This guy is doing pro wrestling every night. He's the world champion. He's a rock star. He's a real rock star and like a fantasy rock star. He's living his fantasy rock star dream. He's out there on this boat in the middle of the ocean, and like everybody here is here to see him. Like, he can do no wrong even when he's playing a bad guy. I'm just watching this guy, and
they're singing. The fans are singing that Judas song.
Yep. Somebody came up to me last night, and they just pointed out, like, you know, years ago, Jericho's character had this deal where I'm the role model, and this person just told me, like, this man is a role model. Like, look at this guy. Like, everything that he loves in his life.
Well, I give him that.
Well, I mean, sure, everybody's got their vices, but, like, everything that this guy loves in his life, he's doing on the boat this week.
Yeah.
In the middle of the ocean.
Yeah.
So, more power to him.
You know, he arranged this thing, and, it was like this thing was a giant success. But, yeah, I mean, the crowd... Like, this is, he's got comedians, and he's got DDP Yoga, and he's got all of this stuff. But this is completely a pro wrestling crowd. This is not a rock concert crowd, but they love the concerts. I mean, at least Jericho's, the two that Jericho did, because it was packed and the crowd was going crazy. And, I mean, to me, last night was really, I think last
night was the most fun night.
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, well, watching the live taping was really good, but last night, as far as pure fun, yeah, I would say last night, except for about 40 seconds, was definitely the most fun.
So they're doing the concert, and Jericho calls Marko up onto the stage, and he says, I don't know if you guys know this, but Marko Stunt can sing. And he tells a story.
This is a great story.
I'll try and do the PG version, but basically the story is, he said, if you would have told me a year ago that I would be wrestling Marko Stunt and he would be booked on my boat, I would have told you something very naughty.
Yes.
And he goes, I took my head out of my ass and I watched some of his matches.
He even said like when they signed Marko, he was like, "What the hell are you doing?"
Well, he didn't say this on stage. This was later.
Okay.
But he goes, I watched some of his matches and this dude is over.
We had a long talk with him about, it's the same thing that, like, again, I always like say to people, and this comes from the 80s, okay, when things would happen and guys that we were told wouldn't get over or things that we were told wouldn't worked. And I remember and it was Paul Heyman, he goes like, this is the wrestling. What works. If it works, we can come up with all these reasons why what works shouldn't work. But if it works, all those reasons basically mean nothing. And I think it was actually in reference to, it was in reference to a lot of things, but one of them was Hulk Hogan as WWF champion, because there was a reason, like, people don't understand it now, why Hogan was never made champion, because of the idea that you don't want a babyface so big, a performer so limited to play world champion who really couldn't do a match more than 12 minutes or else it would kind of fall apart, could only do one kind of a match, and all these reasons, how do you build return matches? And granted, Hogan wasn't the greatest return match guy like Bruno Sammartino was, but still, Hulk Hogan was one of the greatest drawing cards, and that Hulk Hogan world title run from 84 to 90 with a 1-year exception is one of the great world title runs business-wise in history, and you can't take that away, whether all those things matter. But it was like early on, it was like Hulk Hogan's obviously working in this role, and it's like, what works.
Yeah, well, hold that thought. What works. Back in a moment, Observer Live. We're back into the show. Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Dave Meltzer, also of WrestlingObserver.com. We're talking about the idea of what works. And Jericho's been around for 30 years. And a lot of that was spent in WCW and then WWE. And when you've been around that long, when you first see a Marko Stunt, the guy's too small. But he's not believable.
But you know what? Like the thing with Marko where... let me
get through this.
Yes.
So, it's not just Marko Stunt, but it's a lot of different things. The working with Darby Allin, who wants to do spots with his hands tied behind his back. There's a lot of things that Jericho, when he first hears it or he first sees somebody, his instant reaction is what a lot of old school wrestlers would think, which is, this is not going to work.
Yeah, me too.
But he is willing to
when you
give
see
things a shot and see what works. And if something is working... he's going to go with it.
Well, it's
and that's the story that he told about Marko Stunt. The guy is over.
The guy's over.
And he's over. That's it.
Yeah.
So anyway, the point of all of this is, calls Marko up on the stage, Marko does a song, and the place goes absolutely crazy. I mean, whatever you think about Marko...
He can sing.
And his family. The dude is a very, very charismatic, talented guy. Place goes crazy for him, and after it's over, Jericho just says, "Do you want a show here next year? You're booked." And so next year on the cruise, Marko is going to get his own stage show.
He is? I didn't even hear that.
Yes.
And, oh, my gosh.
I mean, he plays the guitar, he sings, he's got all of these ideas, he was over the moon. Like, all of the AEW people that were back there are just
they were hugging him, yeah.
They're all so happy for this guy. That was like one of the highlights of this cruise.
I will say that was really something. I mean, it was so much that, like, normally I would say, like, the idea of you put Marko Stunt on television singing on a wrestling show, I think it's, like, you tell me that it's an awful idea. But I would say that, like, I hope that this thing was taped and, like, not the whole song.
No, don't show the whole thing, but clips should be on Dynamite.
There should be 15 seconds of him singing on Dynamite next week, just because the crowd is going so crazy.
It's not even the singing. What they need is the last. They need a clip of the singing, and then they need the clip of the very end when he finishes, and everybody is chanting his name. And then he jumps into the crowd like a mosh pit, and they body surf him all over the boat, and they're chanting his name. I just watched that, and I thought, dude, if this were on television, this guy is like, he's a superstar.
Yep.
They've got to have a clip of this on television.
I hope they do. I hope that this thing's that there's someone was taping this and just, like I said.
There's video of it for sure.
Oh, there is?
Yeah, because somebody took his phone and filmed the whole thing. So I know there is footage. I mean, even if
but it's somebody with a phone.
But even if it's that, I mean, anything.
Yeah.
Like sometimes that handheld footage from a thing like this is really cool. It's like, the fans are all. It was so cool.
It was a real cool visual. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of fans would have had some footage of that actually.
So that was last night, and then today there's more wrestling coming. Right? What do we have today?
I don't know the lineup.
Is there wrestling?
There's 2 shows.
Okay.
I think I know that there's a late show because we're gonna eat dinner after the late show.
All right. Well, listen, we got to do a couple of news notes here because there is stuff going on. So I think, we talked about Dynamite. The only thing that I heard that we wouldn't have seen is I got tons of feedback about how cool it looked on the boat.
Good.
I got tons of feedback about Jericho's commentary. Apparently, the whole time.
What did Jericho say?
I guess he did a great job, like when the fans were chanting at the boat, which I guess they bleeped the profane chants off somehow.
Yeah.
But he spent a lot of the time just tearing apart Moxley. So
that's his role.
That's setting up obviously the match they're going to have together.
Right, Feb 29.
But a lot of the feedback is from people just saying, "Can we have every week on a boat?"
Really?
Yep. It's one of those things. It's just you don't want to have every week on a boat.
No.
Like there shouldn't be a promotion that runs on a boat.
Boat Championship Wrestling.
I mean, for sure.
Norwegian Pearl Championship Wrestling.
Yes.
That's the next promotion.
For sure, every year they've got to be on the boat. I mean, it just has to be the annual.
I do think that's a great idea. Is to do an annual. I always love these location shows, unless it's Sturgis. Sturgis was a disaster.
Sturgis was bad because of the motorcycles and everything. But,
yeah.
I mean, the idea of in a rally or something, it's not a terrible idea, but that was a bad idea.
Yeah.
So for the NXT show, there's a couple of big notes. Keith Lee won the NXT North American title.
Good.
Which I argued he should have.
Yes,
because pulled the trigger on this guy. And they also have the Dusty Classic finale. I expected Matt Riddle and Pete Dunne versus Undisputed Era, as I'm sure everybody else did. I guess because they're doing Worlds Collide, they figured they had to put over a UK team. But in fact, the grizzled young vets beat the Undisputed Era. And so the finals are the grizzled young vets versus Riddle and Pete Dunne. Was Matt Riddle on this boat?
Matt Riddle's never been on this boat.
All right, because his hair was braided for this show. So I was wondering if maybe he also got off on the Bahamas and then flew back. But yes, that's the finals. And it takes place on next week's television.
Maybe he heard us.
Maybe he did. He was like, that's what I'll do next. Last week I had a mustache. This time I'll do braids. So next week it is the finals of the Dusty Classic, and also Tegan Nox and Dakota Kai are on the show. And according to our front page here...
So, no, real quick, coming off of that. So, Because I would have thought that Fish and O'Reilly defend against the winners of the Dusty Tournament. Makes sense, right, on the Portland show. Okay? But if they lost, so does that mean they're going to have 2 defenses?
Well, I mean, they don't have to do 2 defenses on the same show. But
No, not on the same show.
They could do a defense against the grizzled young vets.
Now, could they...
They could do another defense...
But it won't be on Worlds Collide
against the winners.
Because they got the 8-man tag on Worlds Collide. So that's why it's like, what was the point? To me...
Maybe they'll put that match on Survivor Series, or on Royal Rumble. They need matches.
No, they don't need matches. They got 2 1-hour matches.
They do have 2 1-hour matches, but it's going to be a 7-hour show.
I sure hope not.
So this here says, Mike Johnson reported Wednesday, WWE decided to rename the WWE NXT Women's title. It will now be known as the NXT Championship with no gender stated.
But that's stupid. That's stupid in a different direction.
Yes. If you're going to take the gender out of the title, then you may as well just have all genders fight for the same title.
Exactly.
But they don't want to have the genders fighting each other.
Okay, I wouldn't. Okay.
How about I got a better idea?
No, this is just
instead
stupid.
Of taking the word, I got a better idea. Instead of taking the word women out, how about you just add the word men to the other title?
Absolutely, that's fine. But that's just like I said, that's stupid in reverse. I do get the idea that because the men's title aren't called men's titles, that by calling the women's titles, if you could look at it that way and go, that's not fair.
So call them the men's titles.
Exactly. Because it's just, that's like with UFC, okay? It's like you've got UFC bantamweight champion and UFC women's bantamweight champion, and in boxing the same way. You've got, all these titles and you got women's titles, and it's like there's a reason for that, and it's like these guys...
If I'm watching gymnastics in the Olympics, and I turn
it's
on the
called
TV,
women's gymnastics
and men's. It'll say men's floor, women's floor.
Yes, or men's.
It will not say floor and women's floor, but it won't also just say floor.
No, and it's men's wrestling and women's wrestling in the Olympics, and men's judo and women's judo in the Olympics. So they're trying to be. It's just that's just stupid, I mean, and I'm going off too much on it, but. That's like a Vince thing. I mean, that might be Vince, not Vince's call, but it's like that's one of those WWE things where I don't know. It's just, it's not a big deal, but when you think about it, it's like there's a reason. There's a reason all these other sports do it this way, and like call championship belts. You know what I mean?
Well, let's not get crazy here. So the other note is we've got New Japan doing their U.S. tour, but Kota Ibushi.
Did he get hurt?
He is off the tour.
Oh, that hurts a lot.
He has contracted type A influenza.
Well, that was when I was there. Everybody was getting sick there.
Well, he's sick and he's not doing it. He's going to be coughing for 3 months now.
He's got to be really sick. Can you imagine how sick it would be for Kota Ibushi to miss matches?
He'd have to be on his deathbed practically.
He'd have to be so sick. That guy. I mean, he's crazy. I mean. Look, he did that whole G1.
He did the whole G1 after blowing out his ankle and having it 5 times the size it normally was, and he still did it.
Not just did it.
But it was great, yeah.
He had great matches every night.
Well, I mean, some of it could also be that, like, if you got this guy with the flu, I mean, do you want this guy on an airplane for X number of hours with all of the other wrestlers traveling to America and risking getting every single person on that plane ending up with the flu? I mean, anyway, he's off the show, so...
But, I mean, look, when I was in Japan, people... that's one of the reasons I've been coughing. Well, it's probably Jim Valley's fault, honestly, but still.
Oh, man, throw Jim Valley under the bus? Are you kidding me?
I'm not throwing him under the bus.
Maybe you gave it to Jim Valley.
No, that's not what happened. But that doesn't matter. And it's not... No, Jim Valley worked really, really hard. But that's just how it turned out. It was because Jim Valley was such a trooper... working while he was sick, and I'm such a trooper saying that, like, if I get sick, it's okay because we still have to do the shows, instead of thinking, like, I'm going to be coughing for 3 months, maybe I should, like, take 3 days off. But no, it's fine.
All right, so the other note here, before we have to wrap up this segment, Raw ratings from Monday, the show up 17%.
Well, of course it's going to be up.
2.376 million viewers.
So that's a good number.
Yep, 2.548 million in hour 1, 2.492 hour 2, so very steady. And third hour drop was big, but still 2.101 million viewers.
Yeah, that's a big drop.
So 3-minute overrun. They're still having these random overruns. 0.83 in 18 to 49 topped everything on cable TV. And year to year, only down 3.5%.
That's good.
So that's the Raw number. It looks like Raw and SmackDown, like plus or minus, it's about 2.4 million viewers for each show.
Mm-hmm.
I think SmackDown was around 2.5 million for this week, at least the overnight. So that is that. All right, this weekend we have got, as noted, the Worlds Collide show. We have got the Royal Rumble, Raw on Monday, UFC. Are you ready for all of this?
I have no choice. I have to be ready. It's okay. I've been living this fantasy life for 4 days, watching Chris Jericho go through all this, and just relaxing in a boat, looking out the window, hanging out with you. So what the hell? You know, it's been great.
Yeah, this is the first. I can't say it's a non-working vacation
because all we've done is work.
We have worked virtually nonstop here on this boat, but that's fine because when we weren't working, we were on a boat.
That's
and
right.
We had a great time. And next year, February 1 through 5 is the next Jericho Cruise, and if all goes well, Dave and I are going to be here again. So the only thing I will say is, if all of this sounds like a fun time, this is going to sound like an ad. Okay?
It does sound like
But it's not an ad. I'm not making any money for this.
That's right.
If this sounds like fun, you probably should make plans now.
Early, because I believe that because of that thing being on television.
Yes, because of the show on TV, I have a feeling that when they put the boat on sale, it's going to sell out immediately.
I believe it's going to sell out much quicker because
So I'm not doing this for an ad. I'm doing this because people are going to be really mad if they can't get on this boat. And I'm telling you, if you decide you're going to wait, you're not going to get on this boat.
Yeah, this is for listeners and everything like this. It's like if you think it might be fun, it's more fun than you think.
Yes.
And yeah, don't hesitate. Unfortunately, because there is it sounds like with thousands of seats, 2,000 plus, that there's plenty, but it's really you're going to you're probably going to have to. When it goes on sale, whenever they announce it, I would say get your whoever you want to go with, and just say get your plans going, and just go look, we just got to block this out. We got to take this week off work. That's it. We're going, and don't wait.
Don't wait. All right, stand by, everybody. Back in a moment. Wrestling Observer Live. Back here for the final segment of the show. Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live, Dave Meltzer. This is the last Observer Live that we are doing, because as it turns out, this boat is docking at 8:30 a.m. Eastern. And so we're going to be getting off this boat. Actually, it docks at 6 a.m. We have to be off the boat by 8:30 a.m., but we're going to be back in the airport,
so wait a
flying
minute.
home. Yes.
Okay, there's no way we're going to bed early tonight.
No, we're getting no sleep tonight.
No, we're getting no sleep tonight,
No.
for sure. Okay.
Yes, the boat docks very early. We're off. Then we have to get on an airplane, fly across the country. So, yes.
Then I have to check all my emails for the last...
This will take Dave weeks to check all of these emails. If you don't have something important to send Dave, do not send it to Dave now.
No, everyone's going to be sending the awards ballots. And that's
oh,
fine.
my God. You're going back to 2,000 awards ballots? Holy smokes.
No, but it's okay. So many people volunteered to help. When I did it out on that last show, so many people. It's not even no one's even going to be overloaded. It's going to be fine. It's going to be good. But yeah, I don't know how many awards ballots, but there's going to be a ton. Yeah.
All right, so that's going to be the plan, and we'll be back on Saturday night. We'll be talking UFC and Worlds Collide. We'll be back on Sunday with the Royal Rumble. Back on Monday for Raw, and I presume I'm back on Observer Live Sunday, back at home. So you can look forward to that. And I want to thank everybody here at the Jericho Cruise. I want to thank everybody at home for listening. I want to thank everybody in the studio. Mike, as always, callers and listeners. Scott for getting everything uploaded after I sent it out there. And Dom as well, who actually I think did most of the uploading. But I want to thank everybody for that. And we are out of here. So check out the front page for more. Talk to you again next time. Wrestling Observer Live.